What if I told you there's a word that exists in every single language on Earth? Not a word that spread from one place to another, but a word that emerged independently in every culture, in every corner of the globe, from the remote villages of the Amazon to the bustling streets of Tokyo. A word so fundamental to human communication that we literally cannot have a conversation without it. You've probably already used it today without even thinking about it. The word is, huh. That's right, huh. The tiny sound you make when you didn't quite catch what someone said. The little grunt that signals confusion and prompts the other person to repeat themselves. It might seem like nothing, just a noise you make, but linguists have discovered something remarkable about this humble syllable. It's not random at all. It's actually the closest thing we have to a universal word. Now, you might be skeptical. After all, languages are wildly different from each other. English has nothing in common with Mandarin. Arabic shares almost nothing with Finnish. So how could a word possibly exist in all of them? The answer tells us something profound about what it means to be human. Let me take you back to 2013, when a team of researchers from the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics published a study that would change how we think about language. They analyzed conversations in 31 different languages from around the world, languages as diverse as Chapala, a language spoken in Ecuador, to Murin Patha, an Aboriginal language from northern Australia. They looked at Icelandic and Korean, Sierra Leone's Mande, and Italy's Italian, and what they found was astonishing. In every single one of these languages, speakers used a short, questioning sound that sounded almost identical to huh. Now, this wasn't because these languages had borrowed from each other. These were isolated language families that had developed independently for thousands of years. Yet somehow, they all converged on the same solution to the same problem: the problem of misunderstanding. Think about what happens in a conversation. You're talking to someone, and they say something you didn't quite catch. Maybe there was background noise. Maybe you were distracted. Maybe their pronunciation was unclear. Whatever the reason, you need a way to signal, "Stop, I didn't get that, say it again," and you need to signal it fast, without derailing the conversation entirely. This is where huh comes in. It's the perfect conversational tool. It's incredibly short, usually less than half a second. It requires almost no effort to produce. It doesn't have any consonants that might be difficult for some speakers. And its rising intonation clearly signals a question, even across language boundaries. It is, in other words, the most efficient possible solution to a universal problem. But here's where it gets really interesting. Huh isn't just a reflex, like a sneeze or a cough. Children don't start saying huh until they're about 2 years old, around the same time they start having real conversations. And adults don't say huh to themselves when they're alone and confused about something. It only appears in social interaction. This means huh isn't just an instinct, it's learned. It's part of language, not just part of biology. The researchers call it a conversational word, and the reason it appears in every language is that every language faces the same constraint: conversations need to flow smoothly. When communication breaks down, there has to be a quick way to repair it. Languages that didn't develop this tool would have put their speakers at a disadvantage. So, independently, across the globe, languages evolved the same solution. It's what scientists call convergent evolution, the same reason dolphins and sharks both have streamlined bodies, even though one is a mammal and one is a fish. Now, you might be wondering about other candidates for universal words. What about mama? That one's pretty universal too, right? Well, yes and no. The word mama does appear in an incredible number of languages, but for a completely different reason. It's not a solution to a communication problem, it's an accident of infant anatomy. When babies start making sounds, the easiest consonant for them to produce is M. Their lips are right there, and closing them requires almost no coordination. When they open their mouth while making sound, ma is what comes out. Parents, desperate for their child's first word, eagerly interpret this as meaning mother, and thus, mama becomes the word for mother in language after language. It's not convergent evolution in the same way is. It's more like a biological coincidence that languages have formalized in similar ways. But is different. Emerged because it was the most efficient tool for a specific job, and that job is essential to human communication. Without a way to signal misunderstanding quickly and easily, conversations would constantly break down. We'd have to stop and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat yourself?" every time we missed something. That might not sound like a big deal, but multiply it by the thousands of times it happens in daily life, and you start to see why every language evolved a shortcut. There's something beautiful about this. Beneath all our differences, our cultures, our histories, our wildly varying grammars, we all share this tiny word. It's a reminder that at the most fundamental level, human communication works the same way everywhere. We all misunderstand each other. We all need help clarifying. We all need to say, "Wait, what?" And we all say it almost exactly the same way. The universality of also tells us something about language itself. For a long time, linguists focused on what makes languages different, the different sounds, the different word orders, the different ways of conceptualizing time and space. And those differences are real and fascinating. But reminds us that there are also deep similarities, constraints that shape all human language because they reflect the fundamental nature of human interaction. This research has practical implications too. Understanding that is a universal conversational tool helps us design better systems for human-computer interaction. If you've ever been frustrated by a voice assistant that doesn't recognize when you haven't understood something, you've experienced what happens when this fundamental conversational feature is missing. The best AI assistants are now being programmed to recognize and similar signals of confusion because engineers have realized that without them, the flow of interaction breaks down. There's also something humbling about the word We tend to think of language as this magnificent human achievement, and it is. We've created poetry and philosophy and constitutional law. We've invented words for abstract concepts that took centuries to even imagine. But at the foundation of all that complexity is a simple grunt that says, "I didn't catch that." Even our most sophisticated communication rests on this most basic of tools. And think about this. You can travel anywhere in the world, to any country, speak to someone in a language you don't know at all, and if they say something you don't understand, you can say, and they'll almost certainly know what you mean. It's a tiny bridge across the vast gulf of human languages, a single syllable that connects us all. The researchers who discovered the universality of didn't set out looking for it. They were studying conversation repair, the methods humans use to fix misunderstandings when they happen. Just kept appearing in their data, language after language, until they couldn't ignore it anymore. Sometimes the most profound discoveries are hiding in plain sight, in the things we do so automatically we never think to question them. So the next time you say which, if you're anything like most people, will happen several times today, take a moment to appreciate what you're doing. You're using a word that connects you to every other human being on the planet. A word that emerged not through cultural transmission or historical accident, but through the universal requirements of human conversation. A word that proves, in its small way, that despite all our differences, we're all engaged in the same fundamentally human activity, trying to understand each other and asking for help when we fail. And maybe that's the most important lesson here. We often focus on what separates us, our different languages, our different beliefs, our different ways of seeing the world. But underneath all that diversity lies a shared foundation. We all want to be understood, we all struggle to understand, and we all have the same tiny word to help us bridge the gap. In a world that sometimes feels more divided than ever, there's something comforting in that. We're not as different as we sometimes think. We're all just trying to have a conversation, and when we get lost, we all know how to say the same thing. Whew.